Nothing said on the Hivemind is a recommendation to buy or sell securities or tokens. This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only, and any views expressed by anyone on the show are solely our own opinions, not financial advice.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Hivemind. This week, Jose is out again, so we brought back on Jason. Good timing to have him back on too, because the market has been a bit wobbly recently. And so, yeah, as always, I am Ceteris. I've got Jan and Duncan here from Ventures, and Jason is on the markets team with me. So, yeah, we've actually had a bit of like a rebound recently. We're back to like 64K, but the market sold off a lot last week or so. I think a lot of alts really got hammered too, like a lot more. Like Bitcoin went down like what 10% or something, and some of these alts went down like 50%. There's this tweet yesterday showing how some of these things. There are a couple tweets from like Luke Martin and this Brian. A lot of these alts are like 30%, 50% move from like bear market lows, which is kind of crazy given like the year and the run up we've had. So it's a very different market. It's not like everything is just going up in unison. There is some pretty significant dispersion going on. So yeah, I think we want to kind of start with, I guess, like overall market thoughts there and this dispersion effect.
I guess I have a question for Jason. Is dog money still money at this point?
I mean, so yeah, I mean, I want your thoughts on the dispersion question, because it's kind of like your meme dilution thesis, but just like more broadly with alts and stuff. But just for memes, like in general, I kind of like agreed with you, like when you were saying like, most of these memes are like crap. Like, yeah, they are. They're like second, third, fourth, fifth derivatives of like bonk and whiff and like the first couple early movers, right? So yeah, I think most of those are probably torched for the most part. But I do think like, if the cycle, picks back up in a couple weeks or whatever, depending on how long things take, I do think like the structures will probably just do well again. Like a lot of them have held up a lot better than coins that are like fundamentally driven, right? There's some like, I was looking at ARB or something the other day.
Yeah, that was the unlock. We definitely talked about that on this podcast ample times. March 24th, $2 billion worth of ARB is unlocking. It's doubling
right.
circulating supply.
So like ARB is down like was down like 65% from its highs, and like at I think 2024 lows pretty much. So like you have coins that are like, generally like seen as like fundamentally decent coins or for one reason or another. And then like there are more examples. That was just the one off the top of my head. Where these projects have just gotten slaughtered, and some memes are, they're down 40%, but Sol's down like 35%. So it's like, all right, like I'm down the same as the native token, but I'm up like 10x more. I mean, I feel like it's worth it.
It's not just unlocks though. Like I had this tweet yesterday. If you just look at like the 1 year performance, right? Like over the last year, Sol is up like 500%, BTC 100, ETH 50. And then you have stuff like Matic and Atom. And Matic and Atom didn't have and here's up like, yeah, close to 200. But it's like Atom and Matic both down over 30%. I don't think those coins had any crazy unlocks or anything. It's just people don't want to like own those, right? Because the fundamentals, like the fundamentals do actually, I think what you're seeing this cycle is the fundamentals are actually starting to matter more.
Yes
like,
and no.
Yes and no, but it's starting to matter for like the main. So like it's starting to matter for the quote unquote
Cardano's
legit.
finally out of the top 10.
I think you're conflating narrative and fundamental though. Like I think there needs to be each project kind of needs its own narrative to do well, and that's why you see the dispersion. And I guess if you want to bucket narrative as a fundamental value, then yeah. But some of these ran up not on like fundamentals in terms of how you'd normally define them.
Yeah, so I think we can bucket these into different groups. like, I guess let's say we can go like BTC, ETH, and Sol, which are like, Sol still has some unlocks, but let's call those like pretty consensus like majors. And then you have kind of this like long or like this like a lot of infra plays like L1s, L2s, and within those, there's kind of like the older coins like you're saying Atom and stuff and Polygon, which were big in maybe 2021, 2017 cycle, and then have kind of lost like the narrative now. But then there's all these like low float, high FDV coins, which we've seen like ARB is kind of the first major one to see like really big unlocks. And there in fact was not a bid for $2 billion worth of Arbitrum at a $20 billion valuation. So I think that we're going to start to see a lot more of that stuff where it's like, as these low float, high FDV coins like start to unlock, I feel like the market's kind of showed its hand a bit where it's like, I think there's not like maybe like the bid ask like plus 2-3% is like really tight, and like market makers are trying to like pin them to a high price to anchor perception and stuff there, but like there's not a bid when that actually comes to market. So yeah, I think you kind of have to separate out the projects a bit. Those ones I definitely don't feel great about over the next like few years, unless they can like really do something crazy. I think like where you want to probably focus is the majors or projects that are like hot right now in the narrative. So it could be like the meme coins and stuff, or like more fundamentally like sound projects that actually make sense. Like their valuation is like more reasonable, or like there's a world where they can grow into it versus like some of these coins. It's like, they'd have to do something pretty miraculous to grow into the valuation.
And we've talked about how a lot of these are priced at the margin, right? Especially the alts, and we've really seen what happens when the bid pulls back, and you get 30 for wipe and OI as well, if not more, on a lot of these, and so I think part of that's it's a bit of PTSD from a lot of crypto natives from being in previous cycles, and to some extent it is a game of survivor, and so you have like a selection bias or survivorship bias, basically, where those that have been kind of first to run for the door are usually the ones that have survived and are the ones that are kind of the larger majority of holders in a lot of these. And so one of the things people really indexed on has been the ETF flows, and so if you look at most ETFs, a lot of them have on most days don't have new inflows, and so I think that's something that's worth keeping in mind when considering the BTC ETF, and naturally there's going to be a lot of flows at first, and then as that begins to slow down and you kind of get macro fears, and so the bid really disappears. But yeah, I think it's just like worth noting that it's not you're going to have these kind of intra-cycle scenarios where the bid pulls back, and so looking at it as a function of kind of ETF flows is tough, because there's going to be ebbs and flows, and also kind of considering volumes as well. I think ETF volumes have come down considerably, and I think that's more a function of price volatility than anything else, if you look kind of when you've seen the big volume spikes. So I think once you see those flows come back, you'll see the bid on a lot of these alts come back, but then you'll kind of get back to the whole dispersion of not all alts are made equal like they were in previous cycles, where there was just a broad bid on everything, and you'd have these consistent catch-up plays where it's like, okay, this has been the one that's the laggard in this sector, we should bid it because there's a catch-up play. Now it's kind of winners have stayed winners and laggards have stayed laggards.
So like what are you guys kind of looking for to like assuming, well, I guess like what do you guys think about like the market? Do you think like this is like the low? Do you think we go lower? Like what are you guys kind of thinking? And then I guess like the next obvious follow-up would be like, depending on that, like how are you looking to figure out what to buy right now? Like what are the things you're looking at? Like what's kind of interesting in that?
I'm not good at like calling. I'm like a bad bag holder. So I'm not good at calling like where we are in the macro type cycle. But I do think
I
that
meant more so on this move. Do you think that was like the low, that like little sweep of 60K into like 59?
No, but I mean, I'm telling you, like, I have no idea.
Okay.
Well, Jason, we were talking about this yesterday, like where all of this leverage has been. So I think like OI dropped, like total OI dropped from like 75 billion to like 50. It's like pretty big wipeout. Like a lot of positions closed and or liquidated. And then and we saw like altcoins like drop like as a percentage like 40-50%, and like on their open interest, and also some prices at like 30-40%. And that's reset funding across the board. So like in terms of leverage, a lot of leverage kind of got cleared out over the weekend, on the Middle East, like geopolitics stuff, where Bitcoin sold off pretty violently, and then the alts just like there is no bid, and they just fell off a cliff and like liquidated a lot of the leverage. So I think unless stocks like keep going down, like if stocks keep going down, I think we'll probably keep going down. But if they don't, I think it's probably a pretty good chance that around 59K was the bottom. Maybe we like take out the lows at 59K because we haven't touched those yet, but around there is probably the bottom. Just because like all the crypto specific leverage really got wiped this weekend.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that for the most part. I mean, stocks are off their highs like 5%, which for like stocks is like, it's like a decent little pullback in like the index, right? A lot of stocks are off more than that, right? Crypto related stocks have been torched, right? Coinbase is down like $50 in the last couple days. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same camp of like, unless traditional markets roll over, and I think there are like still kind of some worrying signs. Like every day I look at yields, they're just like higher and higher. Gold keeps ripping, and like those are like just generally like pretty like not good signs to have at the same time. But if that happens and you kind of get like a spike in yields, and like the Fed kind of gets like scared again, kind of like what happened in October with like the British gilt thing, right? Yeah, like the new PM come in and have that budget, and then the market just like flipped the shit kind of and nuked bonds, and then pretty much all those markets just like went haywire. You saw it with like US Treasuries, you saw it pretty much across the board, and then you had like all of those programs kind of like, or you kind of had like the Fed kind of come in and be like, all right, we're gonna fix this, we're gonna make sure that these treasury markets are very good and very strong and very liquid. And so like if yields spike up, right, regardless of what causes them, you'll probably get a similar response, which would then lead to risk assets going up again, right? Because if you look at October, like October 2023, when this happened, and just like kind of look at where the SPY was at the time, the SPY was at like 4,100 when that happened. And then since then, it had like 20 straight weeks of green, which is kind of
Bullish.
wild. So like, yeah, it's kind of like something I'm looking for as like potential.
I think
like,
that's like a really good framework to have just in the macro. Like the Fed has kind of showed their hand that every single time there's been an issue in the treasury market, they've turned the printers back on. So like it started in 2019 with like the reverse repo spike. They did like not QE. Then in 2020, like when the treasury market broke during COVID, they did QE. They stepped in during the banking crisis, and then again during the gilt stuff. So, and it might have been one more scenario there, but that's like four clear things. Or like the treasury market stopped working. That's usually a function of like, illiquidity and higher yields and more volatility in bond yields. Then like the Fed doesn't mess around, and they provide support. So I think that's a good like macro backdrop where it's not like, okay, we pulled back 10%, we're worried it's going to go down to like 40K. I think it's more so like this is probably I think dependent on stocks, right? If stocks go down another 5-10%, then yeah, maybe we see like 50K. But if stocks kind of bottom out here, I think we'll probably bounce pretty quickly. But it is crazy how quickly sentiment turned. Like I think so many people got liquidated on like that alt drop, or just got wrecked, or were in like meme coins that pulled back 70% because like Bitcoin was literally at the same level, like albeit this is maybe a couple percent lower, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and alt like didn't really get hit that hard. But this was, and like people were like, oh, like kind of worried, but this was like really bad in terms of sentiment. So I think there's probably been a lot of flush out within crypto.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same camp, right? If equities don't roll over, it's reasonable to assume we're bottoming it around here. There's not a lot of appetite for buying, but also not a lot of appetite for selling here, right? Like volumes dropping off means they're not necessarily interested without some other reason to be interested in selling here. And so you kind of need that catalyst. So on that note, what are some positive and negative surprises? Escalation is going to, and geopolitics is bad. It spikes oil, and that's typically been pretty bearish for all markets. And JPOW was surprisingly hawkish, I think, and not surprisingly, but he was pretty hawkish in the recent chat where he was basically discussing that he's comfortable keeping rates here basically into end of year. So yeah, it'll kind of, I think the market kind of shrugged that off. I was pretty surprised to see Bitcoin dominance fall from the weekend, though, considering alts have not really performed as well. One of the factors is probably just a gradual increase in the stablecoin supply, so that obviously reduces dominance.
Yeah, stablecoins have been up only. That's one bullish chart that I've been looking at. Is if you like chart USDC and USDT, like market cap growth, like they have been extremely strong.
I think a lot of alts, people were just liquidated so hard on that move. And so
Yeah.
even though Bitcoin still kind of was going down over the last couple of days, a lot of the stronger alts got bid up. And like that's like when you see what people actually want to own, right? But like moving it from the macro side and then moving it more to like micro crypto side, I really think that there is something to all this Bitcoin ecosystem stuff. Like I really think that is a strong narrative that people are moving towards. I also think that Solana is kind of becoming this L2 for Bitcoin. And like the social layer of this matters a lot, right? Like why are like the biggest meme BRC token on Bitcoin is doing like 80% of its volume on Solana, right? Why is this not like on an Ethereum L2 or on ETH or something? And there's like there's always been this social tension between Ethereum and Bitcoin for years, right? And so Solana is now, nobody in Solana dislikes Bitcoin really. Like they appreciate it for what it is because Solana takes like an extreme other side of the spectrum view on like the world and what they're building. And so the synergy here makes like a lot of sense to me. I think that I ironically said the other day that like Solana is an app chain to trade runes, and I think you are going to see a lot of bridging between Bitcoin and Solana. I think it makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I just feel like the overall, if you think about what people like doing in on like blockchains, there's like a bunch of weird crypto native stuff, and you pay high fees for it, right? And then it's so like people are doing art blocks last cycle, bored apes, all this stuff, trading meme coins. There's a lot of things that you can pay high fees for, and it doesn't really matter. And then there's like a lot of stuff that you need like super cheap, super high throughput. And so I think that Bitcoin is taking a lot of this like high fee, weird crypto native type things from a lot of other places, and it's kind of sucking up a lot of that liquidity from like the non-price sensitive participants, right? And so I think that this is going to have like a pretty big impact on, yeah, I don't know.
Wait, so how does the
on
bridging actually work?
on that alignment point though, like with the Sol and BTC side, I think that it's an interesting way to overline the ideologies, but or overlap the ideologies, but I think it's just low fees. The same reason meme coins are blowing up on Solana, it's just like it's low fees.
Yeah, but
I
don't know if it's just low fees. Like there's a lot of L2s that have low fees,
but not as low. I mean, for the same reason, like memes in general are just bigger on Solana.
Yeah. Maybe, I mean, listen, man, maybe Solana is just a meme coin in Runes chain. Like that's like what people mostly use it for. Yeah. But like it is becoming, it's not like a real L2, obviously. You're just bridging tokens and trading them. It's like a side chain to Bitcoin in a sense. But there's definitely something there with it. I think it's pretty notable.
Yeah, funny enough, I did my buying on Unisats, and that experience was awful. I ended up buying like twice higher than what I initially purchased because my purchases said they went through, but then they didn't actually go through because I got front run on the mempool, and it only showed like hours later. It was great.
Yeah, I thought I remember one of like my first ordinals. It took like there was like a 40-minute gap in blocks, so you're just waiting like almost
So
an
how
hour.
does the bridging work from C to Sol?
So I haven't looked hard into this bridge or anything. So if this bridge gets exploited, like don't blame me. It's called like it's called multi-bit, I think is the bridge that they're using right now. But it's just like it's like any proof of authority type bridge, right? Similar to like a wormhole that will like lock and mint tokens.
Hmm.
So yeah, like all the security properties there come down to whatever that bridge is, whatever it is. And I don't know I haven't looked into this bridge. So I don't know off the top of my head. Like bridges always get exploited. So I'm not like endorsing this bridge.
What are you what within this ecosystem are you most excited about? Right. As somebody like me who has like looked into it like very cursory, almost like when I started seeing, all the show influencers talk about it over the last week, I was like, oh God, I should probably look at this before it goes up 1,000,000%. Right. I was looking at Magic Eden at all those collections, like for somebody who is, and I'm assuming a bunch of people who listen to this are equally as new with the Bitcoin ecosystem at this point, like where would you suggest people start looking for some of these things?
I mean, I think it's just like if you
Asking
think
for a friend.
no, I mean, I think and I was late. It's funny because I was bullish on ordinals when they started, and I never got in because like the original buying experience was like one dude with a Google sheet, and that was like the marketplace, and it was very cumbersome. But I think like if you look at there's a lot of momentum right now to make like Bitcoin L2s and create this whole ecosystem around Bitcoin. And if you just look at like the value of this is literally Franklin Templeton, I think the other day released this. You look at like the value of the native token ETH versus like the ERC20s or like Sol versus that, right? I mean, now you have this ecosystem, Bitcoin, it's over $1 trillion asset that has never had like anything really built within the ecosystem, now has all this like venture capital money and all this speculation, which has mostly come from the East. It hasn't been like a Western thing, but you now have all this money come in. And so it's like, I don't know what is is it purely just going to be like ordinals and meme coins and that's it? And like, there's nothing useful that comes. I'm not sure. I just think people are seeing that there's like a lot going on for the first time. And like overall, I just think it's good for Bitcoin as a whole because people always bring up like the security budget and everything. And like all this activity is definitely just bullish for Bitcoin overall. I also think the halving is going to be interesting to see what happens with the halving block because now people care about these rare sats, right? And so getting like specific sats in like the halving block is going to sell for a lot on a secondary marketplace after. So this is going to be like probably like a $5 million+ block of MEV. And so there's going to be like tons of reorgs and everything. I think it's going to be kind of cool because this is the first halving that there's been like MEV on Bitcoin, right? So,
Yeah, I think the potential buying power, thinking about it in terms of ratio of speculative meme coin relative to market cap of the base chain is a good way to kind of frame it, I think. But on the Bitcoin side, you definitely need to discount it by a lot, right? Because naturally, people hold Bitcoin for that reason. Whereas when you're going into these other ecosystems, there's a propensity to kind of explore and there's interest in kind of what's being built on top. Whereas with BTC, a lot of these guys are purists, and the same reason you see kind of irrational hate towards a lot of this stuff, despite, even if you are a purist, this is actually like you mentioned, making your project sustainable. And so the hate never really made sense. But I do think there's, it's not, the ratio should be kind of discounted when looking at it versus like ETH and Sol.
Yeah, I don't know how many like hardcore Bitcoiners are going to be swapping into the meme coins, but
no, but that doesn't
maybe.
matter. It's never mattered. And I've never agreed with the people were like, you can't build like roles on Bitcoin. You can't build DeFi on Bitcoin because the Bitcoiners don't like it. I'm like, dude, Bitcoiners are like a loud group on Twitter. Like, who gives
No,
a
I'm
shit?
just saying, like, price wise, like, I don't know if like a lot of people who hold Bitcoin are the same. Like, as
Well,
Young
that's
said.
the other question too, is like, are people selling BTC to speculate on this stuff, or are they selling like their Bored Apes and Pudgy
Yeah,
Penguins
yeah.
and like other meme coins, you know? And I think that's more likely. Like, I think it's I look at the people on Twitter who are talking about it, right? It's like that Moon Overlord guy, and like D's, and these guys are just like NFT degens and stuff, right? So
Which puts a lower ceiling on the potential for all of this stuff to run, right? Because
yeah,
it's not this massive unlock of liquidity that's piling in, but rather just the same hot ball of money moving around somewhere else.
yeah, that makes sense.
I feel like a cool use case would be like whoever figures out Bitcoin borrow and lending like properly, like that's gonna be big. Like who can ever do like the like liquidity or like original DAI model on BTC would be pretty cool. Like because I think you could do something where you lock up your Bitcoin and then you borrow against it like an ordinal that's like a stable coin. Maybe that's possible. I've heard some designs, something like that. That would be really cool. But whoever like actually figures that out, it could
So
be.
do you think that because you have the wrap BTC equivalent on Aave and stuff, so do you think that people are just really that apprehensive towards BitGo custodying their Bitcoin and don't want to do that since the product kind of exists?
I think so. I think like long term. Like I think long term, like having it like built, like as you kind of talk about like the nation state stuff, where it's like, these really big players like buying in over a long period of time. It'd be very cool to have it in a more decentralized way.
Yeah, I think whether or not I think it's something that absolutely needs to be built. Like whether or not people like wrap Bitcoin or not, because it's just like a fundamental primitive that has been like missing. The only way to borrow are like protocols that take a lot of risk with your BTC in one way or another, and so there's not like a clean way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. We've skipped it and just gone straight to degen looping on BTC like that exists in like Juice and Omega and those where basically farming.
Yeah.
Blast
Like I feel like
ecosystem.
a lot of Bitcoiners did like BlockFi and stuff, and just
Well,
wrecked
yeah,
on
right,
that.
exactly.
So they need the decentralized version.
Yeah, no, that does show the appetite was there. Which it's an odd, I guess. Yeah, the mistrust or rather the misplaced trust in the centralized entity versus, or I guess one centralized entity versus the other. BlockFi versus BitGo.
Like, I have like do you think these people would be more prone to use a decentralized version, or just like say like JP Morgan offered something like BlockFi did, so you're like kind of sure that it's not gonna get scam rugged out from underneath you? Like, what do you think the appetite split is?
I mean, we know the answer is most people are going to use JP.
I mean, I
Most
would.
Americans,
like,
at least.
I mean, I would, because like if I have like an asset, like my reasoning is like if I just like am super bullish Bitcoin long term, right? I don't ever want to lose it at all. Like I don't want it to be liquidated ever. So like just using kind of like that centralized entity where like you're not just gonna get liquidated. You can always post collateral if you have, right? So like you're not gonna, while you're sleeping and shit like that. You're
Why
not
does a
gonna get
centralized
scammed.
entity
Well, like
prevent that?
if you
Well, they
borrow
have
from like
better,
JP
like,
Morgan, like
margin
yeah,
rules.
like it's just a lot like when you borrow
They're not
against your
gonna
stock
scam Wick
portfolio,
liquidate
they're not gonna
you.
scam Wick liquidate you, right?
Yeah,
Like
but that's like index stuff. That's like pricing source.
it's just like
No, but they
borrow lending from like
also
the
give
centralized.
time to post
Yeah.
collateral, and
You can call somebody on the phone and be like, yes, I'm posting collateral, just give me an hour, right?
Fair.
Like
and they
that
don't let you lever
exists.
up too much. They
Right. So
keep
like if I'm a
keep
big
you more
Bitcoin
chill.
whale and I need to get liquidity on my Bitcoin, that's probably the solution I would prefer, even though it's really like anti everything that you probably stand for. But anyway, like I don't know. That's
Yeah.
why I ask. Like I would prefer the centralized solution, just like out of the tail risk.
It's funny. There is something nice about not having to manage keys.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely the worst part.
Yeah, which is like laughably kind of counter to a lot of this.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a really interesting point. Like because I want to borrow against my Bitcoin, but like I don't trust anything right now, so I'm just gonna leave it, and it's just gonna sit there and do nothing.
Yeah, like I do agree that
Sailor,
the yield.
MicroStrategy is going to turn into a DeFi Bitcoin platform. I'm
But I do
calling it.
just on that point though, like I do agree that the yield that you can pick up with BTC historically has like never been worth the smart contract or counterparty risk that you're taking. I think there's a chance that like Babylon might be like the lowest risk way to get a bit extra yield. It's basically eigenlayer, but you use BTC and then you just sell the like shit coins that you're restaking to into more BTC. There's like a couple. There's obviously but you're still taking some extra level of risk there.
Yeah, like you can get slashed.
Yeah, I think it's you're doing it
None
more
of these
for
things
the
have slashing.
liquidity.
I
You're doing
read
it
the
more for the
Babylon
liquidity than the
docs
yield,
that they had slashed.
right? Like the yield is irrelevant. At best, it's just going to cover your borrow costs. It's more so just getting that liquidity. And yeah, I agree. Even like a lot of even the major projects, right? They've had smart contract issue years and years after they've been put out. And so I agree with being able to kind of sleep a bit more comfortably, knowing it's stored in a more trustworthy centralized solution.
Stored by Jamie Dimon.
Jamie Dimon. I could at least go to his office and be like, "Give me my Bitcoin back." Like, I can go somewhere.
Yeah. Anything else? I mean, one thing I'll say with the halving, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? So, like runes, obviously the halving is supposed to happen in like 2 days now, less than 2 days. So obviously Bitcoin is launching this runes protocol, which is a new fungible token standard by a guy who did like ordinals. Friendtech V2 has delayed their launch for the meme, so they're also launching then. I think there's a couple other things, but yeah, it seems to be like a pretty big week. Are you looking at like anything else Bitcoin related? Like we didn't even talk about the impact of the halving because I think we all are in agreement that it doesn't really matter. But it's funny like that's what most people talk about is the actual underlying impact.
It's just like I don't think it's gonna be that relevant versus ETF flows. I think it's
Not
way
short term.
more hyped and like I think it's way more likely. I don't want it to be a sell the news, but like that type of thing where it's like really hyped up. People think it's like super bullish, and it's
I don't think that many people are hyped up about it though.
I've seen a lot of stuff on it.
Well, what's good though is that if you think about last halving,
But the price is really what like reflects the hype, right? Like Twitter is not an appropriate reflection of the hype around it. It's more just like it's not really good unless you think this bid is for the halving. But
no, but like, it is
bid.
It is healthy though. If you think about previous halving, the only thing people talked about was literally the supply issuance reduction. That's all you saw on Twitter all the time. And now nobody is actually really talking about that. People are just talking about the ETF flows, runes launching, ordinals, like roll-ups coming. And so it's a much healthier, like way healthier dynamic now that the halving narrative is not really about the halving, it's about the protocols that are launching, which is way better.
I like the framing of it. And I mean, I don't know, like I feel like a lot of the run up we got like after the ETF was approved, right? And then we kind of got that run from like March into April where we went from like, I don't know, 50 to 70K or so. Kind of feels like we just kind of like front ran, like that halving hype that you usually get every cycle. Like, I don't know, like the flows, like when you look at like the ETF flows chart, like I'm pretty sure those peaked in like March, right? Like mid-March, early March, and then flows have just been kind of like meh for the most part. While price has kind of gone up. So I don't know. Like I feel like a lot
equities
of
have been
hype,
up only too, though, right? Like equities have been up only. That's what's driving
that's
Bitcoin.
true.
I don't really think it's been having hype.
I just I mean, I don't really think anybody really cares about the halving from that perspective.
On that note of all the stuff launching though, if we assume that there's not going to be this new pile of money that's moving into crypto, it's got to come from somewhere. So I mean, you do have new money coming in via increased stablecoin supply, right? Like that's one.
Stablecoins are ripping.
Yeah, which
like
is
we kind of got off topic, but like okay, last time Bitcoin was at this price, or yesterday's price was like March 4th, right? Early March. So Bitcoin's like flat from then, and stablecoins are up like 12 billion, which is like
Yeah,
Bitcoin
that's
spot
bullish.
stablecoins up 12 billion, like 10% of all stablecoins. Like stablecoin, like pull up that chart if you want some hope. Another interesting thing I talked just on the stablecoin side. I was listening to a podcast with some macro people, and they were just talking about how the US might look for like more buyers of treasuries, and like stablecoins could be a good like lever they could pull, because like it's like getting really adopted in all these countries where their currencies aren't very good. But I think like talk about a bullish case is like, oh, we could source another like couple $100 billion a year in demand from stablecoins if we're like really favorable to them regulatorily, and then that would probably be good for like all
It's a couple
crypto.
$100 billion.
Like I think over the course of a couple of years, yeah. Like
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
right now it's at 140 billion. Let's say like Yellen comes out and like, oh, like we love stable coins, like no regulatory risk, like just do what you can with them. BlackRock, yeah, tokenize those T-bills, get those everywhere. Like I think that if they really kind of, took away the red tape and just like gave everyone the green light, they could get like quite a bit of demand there.
Yeah, I mean, they would only give the full green light though for the most centralized cash backed stables. Like this new stablecoin bill that went in the other day. I mean, it's just like this proposal. And it basically makes everything besides the circle type model illegal. So
What the circle is just buying USTs or US
right,
Treasuries.
but like every other model is basically illegal under that bill proposal.
That's
So
what they want though. They want you to buy treasuries.
right, I'm saying it's not good for. I don't think it's good for the industry. That the
Tether
only
or
model we
what?
have is the centralized cash in bank type model. I do agree that that's like the one I feel most
Well,
comfortable
versus
holding.
what? CDP or what?
Yeah, like even like CDPs wouldn't be like legal.
Okay, yeah. Well, that kind of sucks, but those don't really get any use anyways.
I mean, they're useful though,
Yeah, they
even
are.
if you don't use it as a.
They are. But if you look
Yeah.
at like USDC is that, and then Tether is that, but just like sketchier bonds.
I saw Tether change its logo today, so that's big news.
They're talking to Telegram tomorrow on a panel. I wonder if there's gonna be some sort of partnership. Tether in Telegram. Wow, that
Probably.
would be cool.
Probably.
Payments and Tether. Yeah, I mean,
That would
Yeah, I mean
be
Telegram is. There's a lot of people
sneaky.
talking about the
We're
Telegram.
protected from it. As
Yeah.
Americans.
It's had a sneaky run. Telegram is like tripled since the start of March.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
sneaky. It's top 10.
I know, but like no one was talking about it before a month ago.
We looked at. I mean, I looked at it a little while ago.
Radar.
There was nothing interesting.
You looked at it, yeah, like fucking had research. I'm saying most people had not heard about Ton until like this month, and
it's held up well.
A $2 to $6 run, which is like puts in the top 10, like 30 billion, like 10 to 30 billion dollars.
They just have the distribution right. I don't think there's anything interesting there because a few of us looked into it before, but maybe it's changed now. Like it's been a bit, but the distribution is like not. That's actually the hardest thing. That's why base,
By far.
even though base is not like interesting from a tech perspective at all. They have this big distribution, and they can just funnel people in. And it's. I mean, if you look at think about like Base did this deal with Optimism. Base essentially just took all of Optimism's volume and activity. Like the only thing left on Optimism really is like WorldCoin, who just made their own. Is actually just making their own app chain. But if you look at, I had this tweet the other day, like there's this
Optimism benefit from it?
Not as much as if it was just on Optimism. They get like 5% of the revenue or something, and they gave a bunch of op tokens up. But it does, like if they want to do the super chain vision, then yeah, it like helps to have everybody building on the op stack. But like there's this DEX on Optimism called Velodrome, who made a new version of their protocol on Base called Aerodrome, and the Base version is trading at like 7 or 8x the valuation now of the Optimism one. And so that kind of just tells you like how big of an impact like Base had there.
I think the distribution stuff is going to be really, really interesting because Yeah, like I think it's something like 900 million users on Telegram. Like that's some good reach.
Yeah.
That's like insane. That's like, what is it? It's like more than 10% of the world's population.
It's a lot. Remember when Tron? I think they said they had like 10 billion.
Does WeChat have?
I think 500 million.
No, it's got to have more.
That's what I saw.
1.3 of these was Q3
Alright.
2023 data.
Wrong. Still, Telegram. Wow. And they're
900 mil is a
adopting
lot.
crypto. And also, did you hear the Tucker Carlson interview with the Telegram guy? I just watched a clip where he's like, "I own cash and Bitcoin. I don't own anything else."
Yeah, one dude, 30-person team, no HR.
Valued at like 30 bill. It's crazy.
Well, how connected is Telegram and the Ton thing?
I don't remember the whole story, but yeah. Anyways, we got like a few minutes left here. I wanted to just mention this thing quickly, this new project that I'm pretty excited about, because it's actually like there haven't been a lot of new like projects or applications that I really have gotten excited about that is actually fundamentally something that we need. And so there's this project Cycles.money. It's been in like the works for a while. I read like a paper on it a while ago, but it's by the Informal Systems team, which is like Cosmos based. And essentially it's like this open clearing protocol. And so if you think about, the banking system, you have all these banks that have different like liabilities or like payables or receivables between all of each other. And every once in a while, they just like clear them with no liquidity, right? They just like clear them in their network of banks, like across each other. And so this protocol is trying to do this essentially for like all private citizens. And so, if you think about like you have something with your group of friends and you go to like a bachelor party or something, and you all use this like app that everybody puts in what they kind of like bought, and then at the end it kind of like nets it out and you only send like the cash that you need, right? This is like just this massive open protocol that's going to do stuff like this, and the impact on like the amount of liquidity it'll actually save with like everybody sending money back and forth. If like Jason and I have some debts, maybe I owe Jason $10, but like Duncan also, or Jason owes like Duncan $10 and Duncan owes me or whatever, and like we can just clear that amongst
Daisy
ourselves, but we don't have to know each other beforehand, and like that's kind of what the unlock is, right? So I think this is a really cool project. These are the kind of things that keep me more optimistic, even when it's like all just been meme coin trading and stuff over the past couple months. So I know Duncan. I'm not I'm not an investor in this, by the way. I just think it's cool.
I was skeptical.
I don't know like how much. I don't know if this is something that can like make a lot of money from like maybe I guess if you take a fee on like all the clearing.
So this is just like making people not have to do math to settle payments.
It saves liquidity. It saves liquidity. Actually, like you settle without moving cash around. It's a pretty big unlock. I think it's pretty cool.
We need more apps, man. If this does it.
Yeah. But I think it's cool, and I'm kind of excited that someone is making this.
Alrighty.
And then there's also, and then I guess for other new projects, I mean, Mackie has this thing coming out. I don't know if you guys have looked into this. There's a lot of redacted stuff in the white paper, but it's launching on Friday, April 19th, which is tomorrow. It seems like it looks like it's using Gnosis chain, some sort of merge mining or like merge staking thing. It's all about like incentivizing solo stakers to get like less LSTs and LRTs, and it's got like this whole meme coin angle. So I don't know. That's probably something that people are going to be talking about.
Sutter has opened his DMs and said, "Payment for shell in next fund."
I am not an investor in either of these projects.
Okay, yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Like if it brings some attention back to ETH, I think that would be cool. Like I think ETH has really gotten just.
I was going to ask you guys before we left, like, what do you guys think about ETH?
Same as always. I think it's fine. Like
between base and Sol,
it's like a good restaking
Bitcoin
asset.
is like it really feels like it's kind of got left in the dust here, but I think it'll have like, I think the ETF will be really good
Sure.
for ETH, like really, really good. And then that also, I feel like would kick off like a pretty serious alt season on ETH.
Okay, but like, what if the ETF is not good for ETH?
Yeah, but like, yeah, what if the flows actually
In
suck?
Mario?
Well, I guess it would be good in the lead up for sure, and then afterwards TBD if there's
Yeah,
not a
like
lot
what
of
if the
attention
flows are
on it.
just bad and there's
No,
just like not much demand?
I think that there will be demand. There'll be demand. Larry will get demand.
I think it helps that it's. I mean, assuming it doesn't get passed in a month, I'll like kind of got over this before, but just having the BTC flows to point at, and then trying to extrapolate that for ETH will be bullish. But I mean, what if you kind of see continued attention going elsewhere? You kind of have a cold start problem with ETH flows, right? Like, will flows only happen if there's a lot of interesting stuff happening on ETH, or can flows just happen idiosyncratically and that spurs a lot of attention on ETH?
Yeah, and then one point, like difference between the BTC and ETH ETF is like, I feel like I can really see the ETH ETF like leading to more direct flows into alts and other projects, because it's like the whole kind of holder base of ETH, I feel like is like way more likely to own altcoins versus like the holder base of BTC. And so it's like as ETH goes up and money comes into the system, I think they're much more likely to kind of recycle that into other alts. And so like that bid, that like institutional bid will flow down much more than
It also
has with BTC.
It also kicks off a lot of kind of apps on ETH, right? Like DeFi picks up as ETH activity picks up because there'll be more demand to borrow and more volume, and then as ETH price picks up, people will look for ETH beta via NFTs, and you'll see those marketplaces pick up. So yeah, price is a fundamental and can trigger other fundamentals as well.
Yeah, just like velocity on the ecosystems and just the reflexiveness of like all that making like the DeFi activity go higher and yield go higher, revenues look higher. So yes, bullish on alts when the ETF comes. That should be good.
I'm not as sold. I'm open to it. I'm just not as sold with it.
All right.
So the question: if
Yeah.
you assume ETH ETF,
no counterpoints given. I'm not really sold.
I'm not sold. I was expecting a follow-up question,
Okay,
allowing
why?
you to, like,
Why aren't you sold, Jason?
I just don't think ETH ETF flows will I think they will disappoint. I don't think the TradFi demand is there for ETH in anywhere near the same capacity as it was for Bitcoin.
And why do you say that? Just because
I agree with that.
I think
I think that's
as a
consensus
macro
take.
asset, Bitcoin fits into the whole picture very easily and nicely with a nice bow. You got people like Drunken Miller. You got all these guys who are like, oh yeah, it's exponential gold. For every 5 or 10% gold goes up, Bitcoin goes up like 5x more or whatever it is. There's like some math.
It's a really
there.
good impression.
Yeah. So I just don't think that exists in any way, shape, or form for ETH. I don't think you would be buying ETH for beta on like crypto.
The counterpoint to this is I think most investors
Bitcoin's
don't.
done better.
I feel like most investors don't really like gold. They're just like gold. They can't do anything to it. It just sits there. Whereas like ETH, I could see them getting like really fancy on these really long reports.
Bro,
like
these
staking
people
rate
are
and
not
like
gonna be
the
going on
burn.
chain.
No. There definitely gonna be a lot of research about like the staking
Yeah,
rate,
but
the burn,
gold
and trying to value it like more like a tech company.
Gold's huge.
Okay, but gold doesn't have ordinals.
What? I'm not talking about.
No, but I'm saying
that Bitcoin is a lot more similar to gold in the sense that it's like there's no really earnings or anything. It's just like there. And it's like, yes, it fits really nicely into that narrative. But like ETH, I think is much more like a technology stock that they can like.
I agree. I think
hype
that's more
up
what it's.
yes, but there's
and like
also
build a narrative around.
yeah,
but
there's
like
also
they could
way
just
more
buy
competitors.
Nvidia, dude.
Yeah. But it's also if you don't have enough on-chain activity, then
I know, but it's gonna feed
it can
into
almost
it.
be bearish.
It's gonna
Right.
feed into each other, right? Like people are gonna hype about the ETF, the on-chain activity is gonna pick up. They're gonna be like, oh my god, the burn's fucking
Yeah, I
5%
agree. I
here.
think the run-up
And
trade will be
then-
good.
Yeah, exactly. I think, but so on the flow stuff, I don't.
But I think
it doesn't
after
make
is going
sense
to
comp
disappoint.
it. Yeah, comping it to Bitcoin flows doesn't really make sense. It's just going to be like.
But what else do you comp it
relative-
to?
I think you have some expectation of ETF flows, and then you kind of come up with that
Yeah.
separately, and then it's whether it meets that metric, right? I think it's always going to underperform BTC flows. It's just like there's going to be some expectation, and then it's basically whether it underperforms or performs that specific expectation rather than Bitcoin. Because I agree, I think like there's just no way it's going to compare.
And like
unless
my
there's
question,
just
like
The
my
market
question,
cap
a lot
is
of-
like 3 or 4 to 1, so I could see ETF flows being like 4 to 1, like Bitcoin to ETH.
so
that's
like,
reasonable.
But if you
here's my
think about
question,
it, was a lot smaller. It was a lot smaller of a difference when BTC ETF launched, right? Like you're comparing it now versus at launch
Yeah.
value.
So I could see.
so like
3 to 1
as like
flow.
an institutional investor, and you go to buy the ETH, like buy ETH through the ETF, like what's the thesis there? Like what's the rationale to buy ETH over gold, or to buy like ETH
Yeah.
over like a high growth tech stock like Nvidia or something?
The other thing too is like
What's the
love,
yeah.
people love index plays. And BTC is like, it's not just like this digital gold thing, whatever. It's also just an index play on everything. And you can't say that with ETH. Like it's clearly not. It's
can say
up
that.
50%. It's underperforming BTC by half over the last year. You know, Sol's up a bunch. You have all this Cosmos stuff. You have to think way more about ETH versus these other assets versus BTC. You don't. And it is a different analysis. So yes, while you can do this whole tech angle and say that that's more bullish because they love these tech stocks and all this stuff, there's also way more competition. And so it's not as simple as just saying, I want
On
the
what?
leader.
Like in Solana.
On the decision to allocate, people just want exposure to the asset class, and how you get that is BTC. It's easy. ETH is more of an active decision than BTC.
I think you guys are going to be surprised.
Maybe
I
I would
hope
like to be
am.
surprised.
I hope I am, dude. Like, yeah, that would
It
be
also
great.
depends on what ETH BTC is trading at as well, right? If you have the scenario where the ratio is just gone in the absolute gutter, and then you think about incremental upside on one versus the other, that on its own can spur a decent amount of flow. So on that note, how low do we think ETH BTC goes? And I guess part of that is based on your expectation of ETF timing.
I think it's probably fairly close to bottoming. Maybe it's at 0.048 right now. It got as low as
4.646-ish. 4.62-ish.
Yeah, like this is the lowest it's been in like 3 years. So I think it's probably pretty close. Maybe get down to like 0.4, but I think it's probably not.
I mean, 0.4 is like another 20% move from here, so it's not that close to low. So you can't say it's at the lows and then.
But it's like I don't think it's going to like 0.2. I don't think it's getting cut.
No, yeah, I'm in the 0.04 camp.
Yeah, I think
Also.
that would be like if the ETF is in like January or something, you could probably just see.
It's a lot of time for bleed.
Could just bleed out for
support
like
at
months and
0.04
months. So like 0.0. I think I had like 0.045 a long time ago, but now looking at it again, it probably goes lower than that. So yeah, probably like 0.04 or something.
Aside from like sentiment being in the absolute gutter on ETH, what else is going to cause flows into it right now?
Like flows into the ETF
or no, into ETH.
Yeah,
ETH.
I think the eigen that when that goes live, it's gonna be just the yield, just the reflexive nature of all this stuff is just gonna really take hold. I think.
When is that?
It's hard to support a yield though, because you need someone buying eigen to offset the yield, to offset the selling, right?
Oh, don't worry. I think they'll.
This is like This is the fundamental thing with restaking though, is that like every protocol that uses E3 stakers, they just have them dumping their token. Like the incentive structure is not clear that it actually works. Like, of course, everybody wants points, and of course, everybody wants to get extra yield on their ETH.
Yeah, that's what's going to make it go up. I don't think it makes any sense, or I shouldn't say anything. I think that the use case is way overhyped right now. Like the actual utility is way overhyped, but I still think that it'll cause a run up. Like what drives these markets is yield. It's like money will go where the yield is. Like we've seen that over and over and over again. Even if it's a fake yield, money will go there. So I think that that'll probably lead to a run.
Yeah. Anyways, we're pretty past the hour now. I don't know if you guys like have anything else you want to talk about, or maybe we want to wrap her up.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
No, that was good. Fireworks at the end.
Yeah, it was good.
I think it's worth saying that we record on Thursday mornings, just for reference, because we're talking about prices and stuff.
True.
Yeah. Oh, Could be at 40K tomorrow. Who knows?
40K ETH, yeah, bullish.
Yeah, bullish. All right. So yeah, thanks for listening, everybody, and we will be back in a couple weeks. We'll probably have Jose back, and yeah, happy halving.
Hey,
Thanks,
See ya.
everyone.